Hey, you're about to listen to an older episode of the Volunteer Youth Worker podcast. This is a podcast that Sid Coop, Jason Ballard, and myself, Jeremy McDonald, started back in 2018 to answer the practical questions that you're asking in your youth ministry. But lots has changed since we started it in 2018. We've changed the name. We're doing new and different events and lots of other things. The thing that hasn't changed, though, is the content you're about to listen to, we think is still really valuable. But if you notice that some of the things we're talking about are obviously a little bit older, that is okay. You can always head to youthworker.community to stay up to date with what's happening currently right now here in 2024, and you can track along with us there. We'd love to see you. But enjoy this episode. Episode 114 of the Youth Ministry Team Podcast. This is Jeremy and Sid, and we have got a great conversation from our friends over at InterVarsity coming up today. How you feeling about it, Sid?
Yeah, Jared, I'm really excited about it because, as a youth worker, and I remember this when I was working in Canmore and Lethbridge, being on campus or figuring out how to do ministry on campus with our kids was so difficult. And it's not really getting easier. And yet that's the place where our kids are spending most of their time. And it's the most significant mission field that they're called to while they're in middle school and high school. And so for us to understand how can we be present and support them in their ministry is like such a huge deal. And IVCF does a great job of giving us some ideas on how to go about doing that, Jared. So I'm pumped about today's podcast. Really good.
Yeah, it's one of those really practical ones that honestly, if you're a volunteer and you're on the front lines of ministry, you are our podcast audience. And this conversation isn't necessarily one that you might have had before in your local youth ministry because there's so much effort that goes into our own programming, into our own ministry. And yet the opportunity is so intense on school. And when we say campus, we mean just the school, the school area, building, the land that a school is on when we say campus. And so honestly, really looking forward to introducing you. In case you don't know about InterVarsity, a wonderful organization in our country, Canada, but I think they're actually beyond our country. They're in the US and all sorts of different parts of the world doing this kind of ministry. So we're going to jump into the conversation that we got to have with them. Before we get into today's conversation, I've got Jared here actually in the pre-roll of the episode. And Jared, I know you and Janna are going to give us a ton of great ideas about ministry in schools coming up. But we wanted to make sure before we got into it that people knew there are other resources that you want to get into their hands right away. And so what are those a couple of things that everybody needs to know about?
Yeah. So if you look, I guess it'll be in the show notes. Is that?
Yeah, we'll link everything you say in the show notes. You could say your favorite restaurant in Toronto, and we can link it in the show notes. We have the capability for that.
All right. So we're gonna have some. There's some guides for how can you get into the schools. What does it look like to start a fellowship, to gather students, and to look for things like a teacher sponsor and things like that. And then we've got some guides for prayer. What would it look like to do like a prayer walk in your school? Or to just be getting students to incorporate that maybe with their friends and things in their school, to be praying for their school.
And I've looked through this stuff. This stuff is fantastic. Like as InterVarsity, I know you guys have been doing ministry in schools. And when we say that, we just want to make sure people realize this isn't designed to be, and you'll mention this in this conversation, this episode, we're not trying to sneak, and we're not trying to like coerce and be nefarious in connecting into schools, but to offer like just this great value. And you guys have got a bunch of ideas on even how to volunteer in schools. And so all those resources, we'll link that in the show notes. People can access that for sure. And then there's this webinar where they can actually interact and ask some questions, bring their own unique situations and conversations. And that's coming up May 25th, I think, eh?
Yeah, May 25th. Yeah, me and a few of the other people on the high school team from across Canada are going to be there to help answer questions and whatever you guys are wondering about. So
yeah, that's fantastic. So we'll put registration in the show notes. If you're listening and it's beyond May 25th, 2021, you can actually still follow the link, and we'll offer a replay of the conversation that we got to have. You're just in the future, which is fantastic. We love that you're listening to this conversation as well. Great stuff. Well, let's jump into the conversation that you and I got to have with Janna from InterVarsity.
Welcome to the Youth Ministry Team Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the team of volunteers. So this podcast is for the whole team. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you're asking so you can be encouraged and equipped as you head into your role in your youth ministry this week.
Hey, everybody, I want to introduce you to my friends, Janna and Jared. Janna and I have known each other for probably a couple of years now, eh, Janna?
Yeah, maybe
And
even 3 or 4.
maybe maybe even 3 and 4. That is probably more accurate. Absolutely. Through the conferences. And then Jared, we have just met. So we're presuming that this is the start of a wonderful long-term friendship, Jared. I hope you know that you signed up for that with this conversation. Now, you guys both work for an organization called InterVarsity that I've known since my high school years. In fact, Jared, I know we haven't talked about this, but I filled Janna in that I remember in high school, the InterVarsity club or the InterVarsity volunteers came and were part of my school, and a guy named Chad helped with a club out on the East Coast. I grew up in Moncton, New Brunswick, and so I've loved the little bit that I've known about InterVarsity over the years, but would love for you guys to fill folks in on what's your role in this organization. What do you guys do as a part of your work with InterVarsity? So, Janna, let's start with you.
Sure. So, I'm Janna Ehrenhold. I have been on staff with InterVarsity for 6 years now and did an internship for a year before that. I work as a high school minister in Calgary currently, but I actually did the first 5 years of my time with InterVarsity out on the East Coast in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. And so I've been working with high school students, a lot of student leaders who are doing really cool things in their schools to reach their friends for Jesus, and then came out here to Calgary to see about helping to plant the ministry in this city.
I love that. And you have like a leadership role, or you have a take charge kind of role with InterVarsity, it seems like, because some people will recognize you from even our conferences. So back when we did conferences, you would represent InterVarsity at a number of our tour stops. And so that's a fun thing, getting a chance to kind of spearhead the work that you guys have been doing for the broader youth worker community, if that makes sense.
So it's not really part of my job description. I'm just really stubborn about making sure that I can get to the conferences and partner with other people.
I love that. I love that. And for anybody that doesn't know, obviously InterVarsity's been a ministry it's been a long time, and it's in the States, it's beyond. You guys have a number of different things. Why don't you fill people in, Janna, just on the scope of InterVarsity in case somebody's in a location that doesn't have a club kind of running right now?
Sure. Yeah. So I think InterVarsity's been going for a little over 90 years now in Canada. And we are probably most well known for being a college and university organization, working on campuses with students. But we also do high school ministry, and we have some summer camps all across the country. InterVarsity is in Canada and also in the States. And then we also have kind of like sister organizations in, 160 countries across the world or something?
Yeah.
It's big. It's really, really, really broad. And in particular, I think there's like British roots to InterVarsity, if that's right. So there's like a nice little Commonwealth connection, which is fantastic. Okay, so really appreciate that. And obviously, East Coast connection. I'm from Moncton, so we've got lots of mutual connections and friends. Now, Jared, who we've just met, because the Christian world is small, we actually also know a bunch of people because you're in Toronto. Fill us in on a bit of your journey with InterVarsity. What do you do with the team there?
Sure. Yeah. So, so I grew up in Barrie, Ontario, just north of Toronto. And I grew up kind of in a Christian home and all those kinds of things. You hear that stuff, but it was when I was in high school that I first really started following Jesus. And so I went to Tyndale for youth ministry. And when I graduated, I was looking for some jobs, and I found the model that InterVarsity was doing. And so my role is I'm a high school campus minister, and in Toronto, I get to work right now. I'm working with students from 5 different high schools. I mean, we're meeting online right now, but usually we'd be going and hanging out at lunch, having pizza together, talking about what's going on with their like weekly stuff at school. But a lot of it, one of the things I love about it is that it's in the school weekly.
and everybody brings their friends, whether they go to church or not. And I get to kind of mentor those students and help them talk to their friends about Jesus.
I love that. And listeners for this podcast, our target, as you guys know, is are the frontline volunteers. So people that, they work a job or they're home with kids all day, and then they're so kind to give up their time to spend, a little bit of their week investing in the lives and the faith of teenagers. So that's our primary. Now, some of our folks listening are from, Youth for Christ and Young Life, and they're like, yes, somebody talking about this important work. And then there's lots that are like, didn't maybe even realize that this kind of thing goes on, that there are actual ministries that are committed to being spearheads for ministry in schools. And so, Jared, I'd love for you just to fill people in at the broadest level. Why is this kind of ministry so critical and so important? You've obviously given your life to it, to be in these high schools and to be doing this kind of work. Why is it so critical?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. Yeah, some of my story too, like I said, was in high school, and there was a lady in my hometown that went around to the different high schools. And I have to say, I didn't actually join the club when I was in high school because I was kind of freaked out about what my friends thought about me being a Christian and stuff. But people had all these questions about God. They were having the conversations every day, and I was always kind of surprised. And so then when I went into youth ministry and stuff like that, and I found this model of ministry that InterVarsity was doing, I saw that I could be part of those conversations that students are having. And so now, it's a really strategic thing, because there's a lot of kids when I'll go to the school who'd say like, oh, I don't want to go to church, and oh, I've never been to church. They have ideas about what it's like and things like that. But they will come to eat pizza and hang out and talk about something in their school because they feel super safe. They feel like, this is my school and you're here visiting me. And so that's one of the things I really love about it. You also get the chance to kind of be part of the conversations that kids are having with their friends. So, a friend I've had kids come in like it's their lunch break and they're talking about something super serious that's going on in their life because that's the only time out of their school day to get to talk about it. And then we'll be sitting right there, and I could kind of, either after or even sometimes in the middle of it, get to pray with them. And those kinds of conversations that outside of the high school stuff, I've never really got to have quite in that way. So that's some of it, I guess.
Yeah. Like you get, obviously, so you said a lot of kids that don't necessarily come to church right away. Like what would be the percentage of, all the teenagers that you get a chance to connect with? What are the percentage that are unchurched, that don't have church backgrounds or connections?
Yeah. When I've been in the school, there's been points where it's been as high as like 60% of the kids. Mm-hmm. So I even at one of the schools for a while, we had a student leader and she was a Christian, and there was like 20 kids coming to the club every week, and maybe like 3 of them had been to church. So, and we were doing like youth alpha. So that happens sometimes. Yeah.
That's wild. And so like, what's the conversation like when you're in a room and it's like, man, there's just no context for faith. And the one student that you've got, they're overwhelmed by, like, they're helping and they're, driving it, but you've got all these folks that have got no filter for it. What does it go? How does it go?
Yeah. Well, we do a lot of asking questions and trying to get through. It takes a little bit, people asking questions like, wait, so are Baptist Christians are like Catholics Christians? You get all these questions kind of from all over. And then sometimes we get into just the thing I like about it is people are usually pretty real. Like they don't feel like, oh, we shouldn't talk about that. So they do, like, they just talk about whatever kind of questions, like they'll, the ones usually, at least in that case, my one student leader, she was just excited to see that her friends cared about having kind of these conversations about the Bible and stuff.
Okay. So Jared, tell me about, what does that do for the faith of that one student? Like, So she or he is watching all of their friends like engage in these kind of spiritual conversations. Like, I'm assuming that's a big life-giving thing.
Yeah, I think it is. From my experience, I've seen students, they start to own their faith in a different way because the questions aren't kind of being asked to their youth pastor or being asked to somebody else. They're being asked to them, and then they get the chance to kind of start talking about it, and they start to think about, oh, what do I believe and why do I believe this? And my friends know I believe this. I'm repping this, right? They see me now as like, oh, you're a Christian, you're a leader at the club, so I want to talk to you about this thing I heard in the news, or some of that kind of stuff, which can be a little intimidating, I think. But then in my experience, they usually come and they talk to me about stuff, or they take those things back and I hear, oh, I was talking to my parents about this, or I got to go, we've brought students to all kinds of like student leader conferences and stuff where they have like really deep, genuine questions because they're thinking of like my friend at school who's going through this right now. And we talked about it at the club last week. So yeah, it really helps them to grow and own it.
Yeah. This is so helpful. I want to get Janna to fill us in a bit more of the picture of what, clubs look like and what InterVarsity, does in ministry in schools, because for volunteers that maybe haven't heard this before, like that, those specifics will be helpful. But I do just want to acknowledge the fact that I love that you're talking about, the 19 that have no faith background. And what it makes me think of as a youth worker is that a lot of times, if we're in our local context, we've got our small group, we've got our roster, that's good and that's worthwhile. And you should work that group and you should connect with them. And we love that. However, sometimes we can miss the sight of the bigger picture of what God needs to do in our community. And a lot of times, even if we feel like we might be winning in our local context in whatever ministry you serve in, the truth is there's so much work to be done. And sometimes, just convincing kids to come to church isn't going to actually help us accomplish it. Like there's thousands and thousands of teenagers that are not going to cross the line of the church entrance unless somebody's willing to go and to at least prompt a conversation with them. And so this kind of work is just so critical. And I love that you guys are spearheading it in so many communities. So Janna, ministry in school. So let's back it up a bit, and then we'll get back in more in the specifics. What does ministry in schools actually look like typically? Not just for you guys at InterVarsity, but like if anybody's trying to do ministry in schools, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think there are kind of two main pathways that people can take. And one is to get involved with the Christian club in school, whether there is one there already or not. And so normally that looks like they need to have a teacher sponsor in place. There are hopefully some student leaders who are taking on leadership of that group, and then other students who are coming, whether it's at lunchtime or after school, or I think I've maybe heard stories of students that meet like before school, which I think is crazy because my brain does not work at that hour of the day. But yeah, there's kind of that route that you can go and support those students in that club. Or you can also be in the school as a volunteer, someone who is trusted. I mean, either way, if you're going to be in this school, you need to have like your police checks and your volunteer forms and everything done. But you can be there in like less of a, I am here as a Christian to lead the Christian club kind of capacity and just help out in the way that the school needs. And I think a lot of people maybe think about like, well, what does the school need? Maybe they need sports coaches. And that's kind of like the immediate thing, but not everybody does sports. So I think I just really want to encourage people that you just need to like look at the skills that you have. So I, by trade, am actually a seamstress. And I was like, how does that fit with anything that a school could possibly do? But one year I went and like altered costumes for the drama program. And there is always a way to get involved and like help out with what's going on. I would say make friends with the guidance counselor, because that's what I did. I mean, I became friends with the guidance counselor not in order to have an in the school, but that's just how it happened. And she introduced me to so many people and had programs going on that she needed help with that I could get in on.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. So, because again, knowing that some people maybe don't even recognize these kinds of things as possibilities. So you think about Christian clubs, most schools in Canada are allowed to host a club specifically around the faith of Christian folks. And so as long as there's a teacher sponsor, as long as there's, it's a student driven thing, as long as you're not walking in to proselytize and hand out Bibles, as you go, like it has to be, my understanding in most places, it's a club for students. Now, the truth is that when you're there, it's an open invitation. And so the cool part is, as Jared, you've explained, that having other students come in or, teens invite their friends to talk about faith, like that turns into this incredible opportunity to meet kids where they're at and perhaps be helpful for them. And obviously you can't chase them down the hallway, but, for as long as you can create a welcoming environment, that's a great place to be. And then, all these different other volunteer spaces to connect with this community. Because for, I think, anybody that, obviously, if you're listening to a podcast about youth ministry, chances are you care about the faith of the next generation enough to take time to do this. So there's the one way to volunteer through, your local ministry that a lot of us are able to jump in on. That makes a lot of sense. But there's other creative ways to care for the faith of the next generation that we want to, I guess, expand people's minds, if that makes sense. And I love your seamstress example because it makes me think dramatically different, but that there was all sorts of random clubs at my high school growing up, I remember. And so honestly, like anybody's skills, my favorite example was always the knitting club. I think I was in grade 10 when the knitting club started, and it was these two sweet old ladies from the local senior center. Like, I don't know if the teacher had to go and pick them up and bring them over. They were so happy to bring all their needles and all their yarn. And so they kind of did like a couple weeks of promotion for the knitting club. And so my buddies, I'm like, guys, we're going to go to the knitting club. Like, this is going to be awesome because we're thinking we're going to meet some girls. It's going to show how like tender we are. An entire group of men, like it was all guys at the knitting club with these two beautiful senior ladies who were so kind to us as we, just made fools of ourselves. So I made a couple dishcloths and it was a lot of fun. But whatever your skills are, that there's room to be helpful and to connect with teenagers. Okay, so there's a couple of ways that ministry in schools can take different approaches. Let's go back to Jared. I want you to tell, and then Janna, jump in as you can think, as you have examples too, because I know you got lots. Wins of doing ministries in school, like your wins that you've seen in being in the school, connecting with teenagers in that way. Give us the highlight reel and maybe one crazy story that would make us terrified to volunteer in schools, because you probably have some of those too.
All right, the highlight reel. Yeah. One of the coolest highlights that I saw was there was a guy who he was part of one of the camps that we go to, and I got connected with my camp, and then I found out that he lived in my neighborhood. And so I connected with my camp, and then I found out that he went to school with a bunch of the kids from my church. And at the time, a bunch was like, I think there was like 5 kids in our youth group. And he wasn't a Christian, but he just had a lot of questions from going to camp that summer. And so me and him met, and he decided we should start a Christian club in the school because I know other people that have questions like this. So like at this point, he wasn't even a Christian. But he started to trust me. And so he told his friends, because he knew some of them. And for the first while, it was literally, they were running the club. I was not even in the school. I didn't have a police check yet or anything. I was buying them pizza. And then I would talk with them after school sometimes when they had questions. They'd be like, so-and-so asked this question about this. And I'm finding out that they got like 20 kids coming and hanging out. And they're like, the teacher is basically just unlocking the room for them and letting them have these conversations at the school. And a lot of them are coming for pizza, but they come for pizza and they have these conversations. So it's cool. Cool.
It's really cool. So tell us, because some of us that are leading conversations in our small groups are like, man, I can't get kids. I meet with them every week, and I can't get them to talk about serious things. Like they want to talk about sports and girls and like wrestling. Like what is this? Why is it that the conversation it seems to be so good in that setting?
Yeah, I think partially it's because it's theirs. Like it's the thing of it's their space. And yeah, like when I go to school, sometimes, I get called sir a lot. There's, oh, sorry, sir. Cause some of the kids, Janna might be familiar with some of these kinds of things, but like kids are coming in and they're like swearing and they're like, oh, sorry, I forgot this is the Christian club, but they feel comfortable to be themselves in that space. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. That's the radiator popping and cracking.
It's fantastic.
Okay.
we like to leave the rough stuff in so that people know that this is real. This is not an ultra polished experience.
So yeah, I think that, a lot of it's because it's their stuff. And another one of the highlights would be like, sometimes just figuring out how to support the ideas that they have. Like one time this kid, one of the students said, can we do this thing called like prayer and pop? And I was like, what is this? He's like, I just thought of it. What we'll do is we'll buy a case of pop and we'll walk around in the hallway and just ask people if they want to pop. And then if we could pray for them. And I thought, this is kind of strange. But it ended up, like, I actually stayed in the classroom in case more students came. Like if anybody's late, because there's always people just walking in and out sometimes. And they come back and they're telling me, oh, I got to pray with like this group of kids who're sitting outside the library. One guy's like, I prayed with a teacher. And some of those kinds of things. And, it wasn't nothing like crazy where, I saw somebody healed or something, but they had these things. And then we had people show up and they'd be like, oh, you guys are the guys who prayed for us and gave us pop. And what do you guys do here at this club? Oh, like, and they started, one of the big things was they started to get this different kind of idea of what a Christian is, and how they can be involved in that. Nobody was telling them. Somebody would show up and say, oh, but I'm not actually a Christian. I just came because these guys gave me pop one time, or I heard there was pizza. And we're like, oh yeah, totally. You can stay, come and hang out. And they're like, but I'm not a Christian. You're like, yeah, that's fine. Most of the people here actually probably aren't. So, those are some highlights, things like that happening.
That's so fascinating. What's the end game when you think about ministry to students? And maybe Janna, you can jump in on this one too. Tell us about like, if it goes well and everything, all the right steps are taken. We get this isn't always the case, but what happens over the course of, a couple of years doing this kind of thing with students for a particular teenager?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the teenager, but I think the thing that I've come to hope for is that over time spent with whether it's one of us on staff or like their Christian friends, whether they already follow Jesus or not, I would hope that students come away knowing that Jesus loves them and wanting to like continue to find out more about that. So just to tell like a quick story, about 2 years ago, I was in my last semester that I was going to be spending in Nova Scotia, and I had prepared a talk for a lunchtime meeting at one of the schools I was working in. And it was actually based off of one of the youth ministry team podcasts about like how to help students study the Bible. And I had chosen, I don't know why I chose this, but I decided we were going to talk about the Transfiguration. And mostly at the time I had students who were like really familiar with church and Jesus already. So maybe I was trying to challenge them to study kind of more of a weird passage. And the entire 5 years that I was there, it was really hard to get students to come to this club in this particular school. And I showed up that day, and one of my students brought like 7 of her non-Christian friends who I don't know if they even knew why they were there. Some of them were like, they were kind of from pretty rough places. And I was just like, oh, hey, we were going to do this Bible study. And in my head, I was like, maybe I should just toss this. But I really felt like God had like given that one to me for that day. And I was like, I feel like it would be unfaithful to throw this out. So I guess we're doing it. So I was like, do you guys want to like study this story from the Bible with me? And they were like, yeah, sure. And so we like kind of talked about it in between them also talking about like the weed that they did on the weekend and like all these sorts of things. And then they continued coming for the entire rest of this semester, which was like maybe 2 months. And I hardly got to know them at all, but I felt like there were 1 or 2 times that I was able to tell them that like Jesus loved them. And some of them had had bad experiences with church people before. And I was like, maybe just this will help them to know that there's something different than what they've already experienced. And it'll like help them be curious to keep going in that.
Yeah, love that so much. Do you guys see students take steps from the interactions at schools into local churches as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I can say something about that. I mentioned before that youth group that went from like 5 kids to like at one point there was like 40 kids coming. And I think probably half of those kids didn't even actually go to that church. Like maybe even more than that, but a whole bunch of them were from the school. So I asked them like, where do you guys go to youth group? And so I started coming and helping out, volunteering here at this church where I'm standing right now. They just saw it as, they kind of took it like, okay, so we can have the conversations that we have at school at the church. Okay, cool. Let's do that. Or we can, and the church has been super open to let that kind of stuff happen. So I've seen it happen. And then some of those kids, came on retreats and stuff with us. And I've seen kids give their life to Jesus through stuff like that, where their first connection point was at the high school, hanging out at lunch. And I mean, into the church, I'm just a volunteer. So, yeah. So I've definitely seen that happen a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. It seems like there's probably there's a lot of room for us to expand our ideas of what youth ministry looks like, because when you talk about being in those schools, it's such a critical part of the journey for so many teenagers. And so in lots of ways, we just need a lot more youth ministry volunteers across the way. Like, cause I know, so we're talking to both of you who are full-time with InterVarsity, but you also use volunteers in these school ministries. Is that right?
Yeah, we have not been very good at that for the past few years, but we're definitely trying to get better at it and learn more about it. And we have, I think particularly in Toronto where Jared is, there have been a few volunteers that are currently working with him and have also there have been others over the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we've had stuff like everything from youth pastors coming and they're volunteering with us. They go to the school every Wednesday at lunch or something and help with the group. And then the students find out kind of what they do. And then they sometimes go back to the church with them, and we get teachers that help. We also have like parents who every once in a while will connect and help. And some things, sometimes it's not always in the school, but it'll be kind of on the side. We'll have like prayer meetings and things like that people can help with. And but like a great example, like Janna said, is if you are connected with the school already as like a coach or something like that, often you could come and be part of our club meetings or something like that, because the school trusts you and they know you, and they're like, yeah, this person's somebody who cares about the students. Yeah.
Love that so much. Jenna, why don't you fill people in if they're intrigued by this kind of thing? What are some of the ways that people can get plugged in, or ways that they can take a step towards doing ministry in schools?
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, obviously, Jared and I have all the time in the world to like go into schools and stuff because it's our job to, but not everybody has that same amount of time, or maybe not everybody is quite as confident about their teenager communication skills or something like that. But I think there's a way that anybody could get involved with what's going on at the schools. So we have a document that we'll make available. It categorizes the types of things that you could do, or the types of ways you could be involved. First, by the amount of time that you have to offer, and then also by your skill or experience level, or even trust level with the school. So some things that people could do, so sometimes things happen like in the school, but sometimes say a school group is running a youth alpha program and they want to do the alpha weekend. They might need help driving people to wherever they're going, or if there's some other kind of retreat that's happening. Just being a driver is so helpful. You can help with like providing meals or snacks. I think it just really is true that food helps people get there, and then they're able to like stay there for the discussion. And it might be hard if you have like a job during the day and there's a lunchtime meeting going on. You might not be able to just like leave your job and go drop off food, but maybe you could like order pizza and send it to the school where one of the students can like be at the front door to pick it up, or just like pick up some groceries ahead of time and pass that bag over to a student leader. So those are some of the more like low level, not as much time things that you could do, but then other people might help to lead a group, or lead a group of students in general, or lead a group of student leaders who are doing the planning and leadership for that larger group of students. You could also like help host a prayer time or a prayer walk. You might speak at an event, or you might be someone who mentors like one or two students. So yeah, those are some of the ways. There are other things on this document, and I'll let people dive into that if they're interested.
Love that so much. We'll include that in the show notes so people can find the link to that and check it out. This has been fantastic. Janna and Jared, honestly, really appreciate you guys' time. Would love for you to fill people in on what's the best way to get in touch if they want to find a little bit more about InterVarsity. And I know you guys are pretty open to even sharing some of your experience if there's a leader out there who wants to dive in a little bit more on doing some ministry with schools. So why don't you fill them in on that, and then take us away.
Yeah. So one of the things that you can do is visit our website, ivcf.ca, and you can find a campus. And mostly, if you're looking for a high school group, you're currently only going to find them in Calgary or Toronto. But if you are thinking about getting involved with a high school group that is somewhere else in Canada, we would still love to talk to you about how that might be possible. So I don't think I talked to Jared about this, but we talked about this in our earlier meeting about sharing our phone numbers and emails. So I'm happy to give out my email or phone number. Maybe that can be in the show notes too, but my email is just jaaronholtz@ivcf.ca. And then my phone number is 403-478-9422.
There you go. Lots of access, and really appreciate you guys being willing to open up and to share the toolbox, the things that you guys have known and discovered about doing ministry in schools. And hopefully we got leaders that will take you up on that offer so that we can reach more of the teenagers in our country or wherever you're listening from. There's so much work yet to be done, and what a great way to take a step and to be a part of doing a little bit more in where they're located, right in their schools. So appreciate your guys' time. Any last words, Jared, before we sign off here?
Yeah, I think maybe just know that the high school students really love their friends, and there's a lot of people who are looking for hope and who have questions. And sometimes we're kind of scared. We think, I know that for a while I used to be worried about going into the school and what could happen. But every week there would be somebody who we would have a good conversation with, or was touched in some way by the community of people. So yeah, like, you know, God is definitely working through them. So, yeah.
That's great.
One more thing. I think a lot of times when Jared and I and our colleagues, we talk to people about actually going into schools and volunteering there, a lot of people are just really shocked that I guess Christian adults can be in schools and can be talking to kids about Jesus in schools. And I guess probably particularly public schools. And sometimes I think people have narratives in their head that like, that's just not allowed. And maybe I'm a pastor, so the school definitely isn't going to let me come volunteer, or I'm a Christian and they're going to know that I'm going to volunteer with the Christian club. And because I'm a Christian adult, they're not going to let me come volunteer. And I think that's just not true. And I just really want to encourage the listeners that don't just assume that your school is going to say no to you, because you might just be missing out on some really huge opportunities. Like, at least go and see what they'll say and see what they need. And especially if you're addressing their needs, they're going to be a lot more open to you being there and being part of the lives of their students.
Okay, so Sid, the conversation that we just had, we've got some resources we want people to access. That's all in the show notes, so they can check that out. That would be excellent. I'll find a little bit more of the work that InterVarsity is doing. And then before we let them go, there's lots of people that make this podcast happen. And so we love InterVarsity for the way that they've been bringing us this content today, but also the partnership we have with Trinity Western University. You like Trinity Western?
Oh, Jared, I love Trinity Western University. Hey, listen, if you have students that are looking that like their vocational options may be kind of, not within like a local church context or parachurch organization, Trinity is so great because it's equipping and preparing students to think about their vocational setting as the place that God wants them to live out their faith and engage in a kingdom culture, or engage it in the way of a kingdom culture. And I think Trinity is fantastic for that. So, excuse me, Jared, if I die on this outro, then that, you'll just pick it up where I leave off. But in the meantime, we love Trinity, and you need to have your kids check Trinity out.
That's the thing we want. And I love that you just push through that. We love the raw realness of this
Which, by
podcast.
the way, that's what Trinity does. Trinity helps kids push through. So they don't avoid the difficulties, but they say, stay the course. You can make it.
Last thing, we also want to tell people about the coalition, because some people are thinking about vocational ministry. And when you're thinking about vocational ministry, especially in the work with adolescents, we want you to think about the coalition.
Yeah, if you're a youth worker and you're looking to do that type of work, and hey, Jared, listen, maybe you haven't really started your vocation yet, so you're looking to get prepared for it, or maybe you're in it and you need to just reset. Do you know what I mean? And regroup, renew. You need to be in a new network, a community that understands you. You could use a mentor or a coach that could help you through your very specific issues you're dealing with. Or you know what? It's going to make a big difference if you could get like your graduate or undergraduate degree as well. That's what the coalition is about. You should check it out. You stay in your local context. It's affordable, accessible. It's a community that's going to be really helpful. And you get the experts and their networks that can help you be better right now in the ministry context you're in. So we'd love to have you come join us at the coalition.
It's amazing. We'll see you guys back here next week for another episode of the Youth Ministry Team Podcast.